right, so we always like to start with about 15 minutes of meditation just to kind of settle in and, obviously to practice. So just however you're sitting right now that feels good. I know this is can be a busy time of year. But yeah, anything that feels upright, if that feels good, while also being relaxed. And we're going to set a really simple intention for this next 15 minutes or so, which is just to be kind. Have an attitude of kindness in the mind towards whatever's coming up, towards whatever experience is. So just taking a minute to feel the connection to the cushion or to the chair. And if it feels good, you can close your eyes. Or if you prefer, you can rest your gaze on the floor in front of us. And we'll start with a few longer, slower, deeper breaths just to settle in and to stretch out the chest and the belly a little bit, just at your own pace. You can just let your breath return to normal, so letting go of any control and tuning in to just kind of how does the body want to breathe right now, all on its own. And staying with the breath, we'll go through a body scan here, starting at the top of the head, noticing that this place where sometimes tension from the day can be held, staying with the breath and releasing any tension in the forehead, in the face, allowing the eyes to relax, as well as the brain, the muscles of the brain, the thinking mind, and the jaw, allowing the tongue to kind of relax too, and the bottom of the mouth. Feeling what does it feel like to allow the shoulders to just release a little bit more, so you can feel the weight of the arms and the hands, just gravity connecting them downwards. Imagining that this body is around the spine like the trunk of a tree. And perhaps these branches which have been bound up by twine, we're just releasing that twine and allowing the limbs of the body to relax around that upright base. Softening through the chest, the stomach, and down through the lower belly. Particularly the muscles of the lower abdomen, just seeing if there's any holding there, anything that can be let go of from the day. And connecting down through the legs and the roots of the body. So breathing into the thighs, feeling the contact points with the sit bones on the cushion or the chair. Breathing into the lower half of the legs. Shins and the muscles of the calves. all the way down through the feet and the toes. Now, what does it feel like to just be aware of the whole body? This human nervous system which permeates, which pervades every limb, has its own awareness. So resting in this whole body awareness, and just spending a minute with the rhythm of the breath. You can allow the thinking mind to fall to the background. Every time we notice the mind trailing off into a thought, this is a simple release and return with an attitude of graciousness, of kindness, not putting any pressure or forcing the mind to stay with the object, but just kind of deprioritizing plans, regrets, just the whole weight of the self, just allowing ourselves to set it down for a bit here. And bringing the awareness to the heart, or to the center of the chest. More importantly, to your deepest desire for well-being. Your deepest desire for care, for connection. And breathing through this area of the heart. You can put your hand there if it feels supportive. You can also imagine that there's like a light or a flame that each breath moves through this area of the heart and feeds and allows that light to grow. And then bringing to mind someone or an animal, whoever a sense of care and affection comes up easily for. First thought, best thought. And beginning to offer silently these simple phrases from the heart. May you be safe. May you be at ease. May you be free. May you be safe. May you be at ease. And may you be free. breathing through the heart. And offering these simple well wishes. Almost imagining that these phrases are coming from the heart. Brightening the heart. May you be safe. May you be at ease. And may you be free. Just spending a few minutes with these phrases, offering goodwill, just a really simple way, no pressure, but coming straight from the heart. Now letting whoever this person is go for now. Wishing them well, giving them a silent inward bow. And turning the same well-wishing towards yourself. Acknowledging all the difficulty that you may have been through in this life. And that you're still here, still going. What would it feel like to offer the same goodwill towards your own experience? And using these silent phrases, may I be safe. May I be at ease. May I be free. May I be safe. May I be at ease. May I be free. Almost trying on each phrase like it's an article of clothing. What would it feel like to be safe in this moment? To be at ease? To be free? Breathing through the heart. Brightening the heart. May I be safe. May I be at ease. May I be free. Continuing on with these phrases at your own pace. You can pair them with the breath if that feels good. And settling in, like almost like a mantra. Seeing how it lands in the body. Not trying to fabricate a specific experience. Just setting an intention towards kindness. For this last minute or two, expanding the sense of love, of care in all directions, above, below, and recognizing that all living beings wish to be safe, wish to be at ease, and wish to be free. May all beings be safe. May all beings be at ease. May all beings be free. May all beings be safe. May they be at ease. And may they be free. So taking your time and slowly coming back to the room, opening your eyes if they were closed. So I'm going to talk a little bit about love, about goodwill, and kind of some of the ideas from the early Buddhist teachings on love. We've been going through this series, for those of you who are new here, on something called the 10 paramis, which are just kind of daily practices, everything from patience and generosity and virtue and renunciation. And so we're on number 9 of 10. It's been an almost 3-month journey now, and we're almost through. So we get to this end of this list, and there's some heavy hitters like love, really central, important practices. And the general idea is cultivating an attitude of kindness. It's kind of a foundation of a meditation practice, of a mindfulness practice, is not punishing the mind or forcing it to get the way I want it to get, but bringing an attitude of ease, of generosity, the same attitude I would bring to someone I love and care about, trying to turn that inwards to our own experience and to others. And so this doesn't mean that every time, I sit down to do this practice, I feel like I'm overflowing with love. Often it feels quite different. And just like all of these paramis that we've been going through, they're practices. And this is one I think that's quite a universal practice. Not just Buddhism isn't the only tradition that says a lot about love and compassion. So in this, at least in kind of the early Buddhist teachings, this is often cultivated through using phrases like we did in the meditation just now. There's not anything specific, that it says this is how it has to be done, but I think it's something that the monastic traditions have developed over time. It's just like a skillful means. Using the mind wants to think, and saying, okay, here, do something it's not harmful. Use some good thoughts. Bring that intention to mind and see how it lands in the body. What it says in the teachings, which hopefully I'll get to later, is really just to radiate in all directions, above, below, north, south, east, west, this kind of love that's really unbounded. And you can also use things like images, like maybe just an image of someone or something that just like easily evokes that quality of kindness. Can be a really skillful practice. And there's a lot of kind of therapeutic models that use similar things, right? Envisioning a safe space. You can use this to evoke a quality that resonates in the nervous system. And over time, doing this practice, it can really, the body and the emotional system can begin to kind of pick up that signal and resonate with it. And this is kind of a core element of Buddhist teachings, is like taking, there's wholesome capacities that human beings have to be generous, to be patient, to be kind, loving, and use them actually as practices rather than just things that come up when they do. Putting some intentionality to creating the conditions for those things to arise. And then recognizing, how does it feel to be caring, to be open to being loving towards others, for you in your own experience. And there's something I talk a lot about in this group, is there's a strong connection between the mind and the body. When the mind is feeling depressed, the body often feels kind of collapse. If the mind is feeling afraid, there can be like a bracing or a tensing in the body. If the mind is angry, the heart rate can get elevated. So there's this interconnection and really no actual separation between the two, to be honest. And similarly, if the body is feeling afraid, the mind can start spinning a lot of thoughts. So the idea with this practice, we call it Metta, is the Pali word for loving kindness, is to use the mind to insert thoughts of goodwill, images of care, because the mind always wants something to do anyway. So it's like, okay, be helpful. While I'm sitting here for this 15 minutes, focusing on these simple phrases, they can be used kind of with the breath. You can really work in developing phrases that land for you too. Obviously, I shared some simple ones today, but it took me a while because some of the first ways I was taught it, I don't know, maybe the languaging didn't land, so I kind of have developed my own over time. And it's a way of kind of giving the mind something to focus on. So it is kind of like a concentration practice as well. And it can start to reduce some of the the wandering patterns of mind, some of the comparing patterns of mind. They're better, I'm worse, I'm better, they're worse, whatever the mind wants to be doing in the moment. And instead switching that with this, just may you be at ease. May I be at ease. It's a really simple practice. And it can help the mind to really settle down in a deep way as well. And I found that making it a central practice over years, many years now, is that it really has changed kind of some of the inner landscape for me. One of the earlier meditation retreats I went on, it was a 7-day retreat, and it was a loving kindness retreat. And I wasn't planning on going, but I had a friend that was like, hey, I will pay for you to go. You have to pay me back. But and I really think you should go with me. And I was like, okay. It was kind of hard to turn it down. And I would actually really recommend, if anyone's considering a meditation retreat, I think this is like a great jumping in point, because there's something really, it's nice to have something to focus on. It gives the mind something to do, and helps it concentrate. And what I found is that, on this retreat, we were starting with someone easy that you care about, then towards yourself, and then you go through these expanding categories to someone who's maybe neutral, someone who's difficult, and then eventually to just kind of like all beings. And what I noticed by like the third or the fourth day of the retreat, that like it was a monk who was leading it, and as soon as we would sit down at the beginning of the day and start with the phrases, it was like, oh, it felt like the body was it was like primed for it. It started to immediately resonate. And I was like, oh, there's like a momentum that's like building up really in the heart here. Hard to describe, and I think probably unique for everyone, but it felt like an opening, a warming. And by the end of the retreat, they gave the option to kind of only eat 2 meals a day if you wanted to practice more. So I started doing that more, and I would just sit in this chair in the hall for hours on end. And I started noticing is that there was just kind of widening feeling, and it was starting to meet where I held tension in the body. For me, that was quite often in the belly, in the lower abdomen, where I held a lot of fear that I didn't want to touch. But I found that using these phrases, it was almost like a warmth starting to kind of slowly melt away some of the resistance in the body. And I can't say I was doing it. It was almost like a process that was happening all on its own. This kind of unwinding of the nervous system, using these phrases, bringing these kind of quality of love to mind. There's this unraveling that can kind of start to happen where maybe there's tension or friction or parts of the body that have been avoided. So Metta activates a feeling of being deeply connected. They often talk about the vagus nerve. You may have heard this. It's like maybe an overused word at times in the wellness world, but it's kind of an interesting idea to be sitting still in a meditation practice, but to be using phrases in a way where you're activating the mind's sense of feeling really connected. By just bringing someone to mind, you can activate this feeling of love, of connection. And so the same, they call it neural correlates, like networks in the brain that are activated when we're feeling really connected in a really good conversation, that they've uncovered in scientific studies that like the same networks can get activated in this kind of meditation practice, which I thought was really interesting. And what this does is it creates the conditions for the body and the mind to feel safe. So things like fear, anxiety, anger tend to activate what's called the sympathetic nervous system, or the fight or flight response. I'm sure everyone is familiar to some extent with what that feels like. Anxiety or fear or anger, the body, the nervous system gets elevated, the heart rate can go up. And what Metta, what loving kindness does, is it actually activates they call the parasympathetic nervous system. So when you're feeling connected in a conversation, when you're having a good meal, you're feeling relaxed, they call it like the rest and digest system of the body. And so this can do multiple things. first of all, it can, in the moment, reduce feelings of anxiety, reduce feelings of worry, reduce feelings of anger, or even, kind of free the mind temporarily from them, give it a rest. And then it also cultivates kind of this environment, inner environment for this deeper, more long-term kind of healing process to happen. This is this really fascinating idea I had a teacher share with me once. It's so simple, but the idea that it's possible to heal the pain from the past in the present moment through meeting it. And a lot of this pain can be held in the body. There's a lot of psychedelic therapies out there now that are becoming really popular for healing trauma, and part of the reason why is they can take the mind out of its kind of normal egoic functioning, put it in an altered state to kind of reprocess things that have happened in the past. And I think the one thing that can be tricky about that is that, from what I understand, is that sometimes the integration afterwards can be difficult. You can have this powerful experience, but then it's kind of poof. Go right back to the mind as it was. And cultivating loving kindness actually creates a really strong foundation for a long-term, really deep form of healing. And when I'm talking about trauma, I'm also want to make it clear, I'm kind of using it interchangeably with like what we call small t trauma, which is maybe things that have just happened in daily life or feelings of neglect. And then there's, of course, like PTSD, bigger T trauma that can be more serious and needs more professional care and help, of course. And so using these phrases repeatedly I've also found to be really helpful off of the cushion. It's something that I found like to be really transportable. It's difficult for me to stay focused or present in what I'm doing, but I find that, I don't know if anyone's ever used like a mantra or something like that, it helps kind of gives the mind a momentum and a rhythm and helps it stay present, and also helps cultivate this kind of attitude in the mind. And over time, it's showed me when in moments when I'm feeling reactive or afraid, to, instead of responding in my typical ways, which was to avoid or to try to repress, but to meet it and to actually just recognize and say, like, I see you, whatever that is that's coming up, I feel you, I'm here for you, offering some comfort, some reassurance towards whatever some of those difficult emotions or feelings are. It was kind of a radical idea for me at the time. Because in the end, what does fear really need? Or what does anger really need? Often there's a deep desire just for a sense of safety or for a sense of love. And so it's possible to provide that in an inward way for ourselves and also for others. And I found that moving through my day, some of you have probably heard me talk about this before, but I made it like a car practice for a while. Driving is where I get the angriest. So I would turn the radio off, and I was doing like food deliveries at the time and spend my entire 6-hour shift just like wishing people well as I was driving around. And it was really incredible, actually, how I was feeling when I would show up to these restaurants to pick up food. It was almost like creating a safe space in my body as I was driving around. I felt very, very relaxed. So one easy way to take it off the cushion and see how it feels, when someone's flying by you or cuts you off, what does it feel like to wish them well instead of like, giving them the finger? Or walking, going for a walk too. This is something Sharon Salzberg is one of the most kind of famous teachers of this kind of a practice. She says that's what she does when she walks. She used to live in New York City. Whenever she'd walk down the streets, everyone she'd be walking by, just silently wishing them well. Not like that's going to radically transform their lives, but it will have a deep impact on, she was saying, on her own mind. So this is a way of working with some maybe long-term, if there's bitterness, if there's resentment, if there's anger being held, the things these difficult emotions impact the most is often the person who's holding them. And so this kind of a practice, metta or loving kindness, really provides a softening around some of those hardened or like kind of calcified emotions. And of course, if it's with a difficult person, it's a means of forgiving the person, not the action, finding ways to relieve resentment or bitterness, meeting that experience in the body. And it can also be a means of, a deep forgiveness and letting go in the heart. It can free the mind from cycles of grasping. So I wanted to share these benefits because I thought it was kind of funny. There's, of course, in the early Buddhist teachings, lists within lists within lists. And for Metta, for loving kindness, it's the 11 benefits of practicing loving kindness. And I thought this was really funny because I was like, oh my God, this is like such a social media influencer thing. The 11 this, or the 10 things to this. So Buddha was way ahead of the game on that. This is clickbait. So he said, the monks, of course, always come to the Buddha and ask questions like, what are the benefits of this practice? And he said, one sleeps in comfort and awakes in comfort, sees no evil dreams. One is dear to human beings, dear to non-human beings. The devas, which are kind of like the spirits, protect them. Fire, poison, and sword cannot touch them. So don't take this as professional advice. The mind can concentrate quickly. One's countenance is serene, serene in presentation. Dies without being in a confused mind. And if they fail to attain nirvana here and now, they will be reborn in a Brahma world, a world of the gods. So, consolation prize. If one doesn't fully make it all the way. And then I also dug through the scientific literature, which might feel a little more relevant. And there's so much on this. It's one of the most studied practices. It's such a central and common meditation practice at this point that we have decades and decades of literature. I was looking, it's like there's almost more literature on this practice now than there are on a lot of medications, which is kind of impressive. Some of the key things I drew out, decrease in PTSD or trauma symptoms, which is pretty incredible. Those can be some of the most difficult things for people to shake. Reduced self-criticism, reduced pain and tension, which I thought was interesting, but kind of aligns with this idea of just softening around pain. What does it feel like to have a loving attitude in the midst of pain? Improved emotional regulation, increased social connections, and I really love this last one, decreased bias. So kind of a way of cutting through some of the mind's tendency towards bias to other people. So this is a really kind of a simple practice, but I think speaks to some really profound impacts in the body and what it can do for the nervous system. It's not just positive thinking, but really training the heart in its deepest capacity for care, for love. One of the lead teachers in the Thai forest tradition always had this phrase, don't follow your heart, train your heart. And it also acknowledges the interdependence of all living things. And it's a means of recognizing that, just like me, all other beings are trying to be happy, whether skillfully or not so. They want to be content, satisfied, loved. And so this is a practice where it's not just for self, but it's meant to be expanded and to permeate daily life, social interactions, difficult conversations. And I wanted to close with this little, it's a chant that the monks do. I'm not going to do it in Pali because I'm going to sound like a weirdo, and it's in a foreign language. But I'm just going to read the first bar of it. They have what are called the 4 Brahma Viharas, which are divine abodes or qualities of the heart, which are loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And it goes through all 4 of them, but I'm just going to read the first one about loving kindness. It says, now let us make the 4 boundless qualities shine forth. I will abide pervading 1 quarter with a heart imbued with loving kindness, likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide pervading the all-encompassing world with a heart imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will.